My name is Bill Sykes, like Charles Dickens's character in Oliver Twist, thanks to Mom and Dad, though of course they always called me William. Still, I guess it's better than Feigen. I'm in my 40s and live in a large detached house in Richmond, a pleasant suburb of London. It was built in the 1930s and I inherited it from my parents. It's bigger than I need, but a house is an investment, right? I can always downsize if the bubble bursts. At the moment, the bubble hasn't burst. I own my own security company and I'm doing very well. My wife's name is Sammy. She is much younger than I am, and when I met her, she was an office girl working for one of my first clients. In the lead up to our wedding, like most couples, we shared our stories. Her father had left when she was a toddler, and she and her mother lived in a shabby apartment above a B&B pub. Her mother, now deceased, worked as a barmaid in the same pub, and I got the impression that she supplemented her income with some customers. Sammy's childhood was definitely dysfunctional. She doesn't like to discuss it, so I'll leave it at that. Let's just say she contributed nothing to our finances, and everything was left in my name. Of course, there was a prenup in place. Sex is always great when you are first married, and for us, it still is. She may lack intelligence, but as Billy Joel wrote, I don't need smart talk. She more than makes up for it with a killer body and a cute face. She's adventurous and never refuses to try anything. I guess I just got lucky. It wasn't long before Sammy wanted to get a job. We didn't need the money, of course, but I've never been the type to insist that a wife stay at home. She got a job as a receptionist at a 3-star hotel. It's in a shopping district, and Monday through Thursday nights are the most business travelers. On those 4 days, she works late shifts, from 2 o'clock in the afternoon until midnight, which gives her 3.5 days off. The first night I went in to see her, her coworker at the front desk has been working there for a year, and despite their matching red blazers, they were as alike as chalk and cheese. Sammy is tall and slender with light blonde hair. The other girl, May, is blonde and bustier. They look like Gillian Anderson and a young Dolly Parton. Every businessman who has ever stayed at this hotel has probably taken a liking to one or the other, or more likely both. The hotel has a resident driver for airport and train pickups. He also drives the receptionists home after their shift is over. Convenient, since Sammy doesn't drive, and safer. Turns out the guy usually gets her home between 12:30 and 1 o'clock in the morning, which suited our lifestyle. I sometimes go away on business trips during the week, and when I'm home, I stay up late setting up our software systems. Sammy deposits her salary in a separate bank account where she can do whatever she wants with it. She's been working at the hotel for 4 years. Home baking has come of age, and so has her job. Bread, pies, cakes, and soon she needed an extra freezer and then a dishwasher. There were no problems with costs, but we started to run out of space. The house is big, but the kitchen is a bit small. Finally, she asked if we could make a work island so there would be more room for cooking. There wasn't enough space, so we got a local company to design and build an extension to the utility room to make room in the kitchen. Within a month, Sammy was in her element, looking after her contacts every spare minute. Our attached garage is flush with the front of the house, so the utility room was added directly to the back of the house. It is accessed by the original back door from the kitchen and the garage itself. It accommodates a washing machine, additional freezer, dishwasher, and a range of cupboards. It really is an investment, as the integral garage and utility room add more to the value of the property than I spent on them. All of this gave us the space we needed for her precious island. The countertop on the dining side extended far enough out to fit 2 stools underneath and became a bar counter. We actually use it for most of our meals, except when we have guests over for dinner. And then, quite unexpectedly, I got the biggest client of my life. They had a branch in London, but their head office was in Brighton. I visited both places, enticing them to sell. Sometimes I spent the night in Brighton, but always made sure I was back by Thursday evening and our long weekend with Sammy. I took a huge commission when they made the down payment and my team set about installing. I suggested Sammy invest in a property in Brighton so we could spend the weekend by the sea. I know your work is important to you, I said, so we'll continue to live in London and just go to Brighton when we have free time. It's going to be fun, a place where we can relax. I'll organize some screenings while I'm there and we can watch the best ones together on the weekends. Good, she said, and then became thoughtful. Is there something wrong? Nothing. No, there is. Spit it out. I was thinking, maybe part of it could be put in my name. I mean, I realize it's all your money and all, but maybe that would be okay? Sure, you can put it in a joint name. Shortly after that, everything seemed to happen all at once. My new client wanted to run a full training course at their London branch. Their system included time recording, flexible working hours calculations, tracking staff movement around the building, and a fire alarm system. The latter could identify who was on site and in what location if the fire brigade was called. We split the training into morning and afternoon sessions over 2 days, all of which took place on site at the company's London office. The managers from Brighton, wanting an extra evening in London, arrived a night early. Naturally, when asked if I could recommend a hotel for them, I suggested Sammy's Excelsior, and forgot to tell her about it. Remember how I said it all started at the same time? I got home early after their first day of practice. As I was putting the car in park, the garage door rattled down and creaked loudly. This had been happening for a few weeks now and was starting to annoy me. Today I decided to do something about it. I scoured the shelves and drawers of the garage looking for WD-40 but couldn't find it. Sammy was complaining about strange noises coming from the washing machine, so I looked in the utility room. I opened the cabinets and they were all full. Strange how things expand to fill the available space. A bit like how work expands to fill the workday. There was no sign of my blue and yellow can, however. I was about to leave when suddenly something pricked me. I saw something out of place in the corner of the wall. I opened all the tall closet doors again but couldn't spot anything objectionable. Already about to leave, I went back and opened both corner cabinets together, and there it was. They were the same size, the same width, just like their doors. But one of them had to be larger, protruding beyond the brickwork. I felt the bottom of the hollow. It was the bottom of the closet, like all the others. There was no access through the top because it was adjacent to the ceiling. It was strange. What was in the hidden corner? Pulling out trays of icing nozzles, I discovered a finger hole in one of the cabinet walls. It wasn't quite visible, but I felt it, reached in and pulled. The side wall popped open and I peered into the void. A torch illuminated wads of money. I took out the top wad and counted them. 5,000 pounds in 50s. I put them back and replaced them all. Just 15 wads gave a total of 75,000 pounds. In some parts of the country, you could buy a house for that kind of money. There was no way the contractor could have left such a large sum. It could only have belonged to Sammy. She must have specified this design when she oversaw the installation. But where did she get it from? Stole it from Excelsior? I had checked her bank statements from time to time in the past, but nothing out of the ordinary. Her paycheck came in every month and mostly stayed put. Occasionally, she would buy herself something extravagant, and recently she had financed her driving lessons. She had about 35,000 pounds in her account. The next morning, "Problem? You usually have a big breakfast," she said. "No, nothing. Just thinking about today's training. It's going to be Brighton managers this morning." "Is there something wrong?" "No, it's just that we've never done this much training before. Our timekeeping systems now take out lunchtime whether the staff are out or not. Maybe it's time for me to start delegating some of the training." "Maybe you should." After the morning session, we headed out for lunch, filling up at a nearby restaurant. I was seated with 2 managers I'd dealt with before, James and Robert. "I have to thank you for the hotel recommendation yesterday, Bill. It's fantastic," James said. "Glad to hear that. Are the beds comfortable?" "We didn't notice. After the entertainment, I could sleep on a pile of bricks. We thank you for these administrators," Robert added. I encouraged them to share their experiences and remained calm as they gave me details. My stomach was cramping, but under the circumstances, I was holding up quite decently, and no, I did not have an erection. It turned out that a casual remark by a bartender in the hotel had suggested to my trainees that there was no need to go to Soho to get girls. Here you could get top-quality sex right in the hotel. They could choose any of the receptionists they liked. Like I said, chalk and cheese. Officially, each girl had a 30-minute lunch break, and 2 20-minute breaks during their shift. Unofficially, they filled in for each other when extra time was needed. So both guys took advantage of what was offered to them. Don't thank me, guys. I had no idea. How much do these girls charge, if you don't mind me asking? 120 for full sex with a condom, but you can take it off at the end. Sounds pretty reasonable for around here. I suppose the management must be in on it. Apparently not. The girls told us that the hotel claims they bring in so much repeat business that they let them keep everything. They even disguise some of the cost as legitimate expenses. These whores must be doing it every night during the week. So, which one did you have? A shorter blonde, Robert said. James had a tall redhead, and tonight we'll both have a tall one. She offered us a whole hour with condoms for $600. We'd be crazy to turn it down. I thought you said they only had 20 minutes off. We booked it for an hour before midnight. They switch off at 11. I see. Won't her blonde girlfriend be jealous? Not likely. She's catering to 3 Arabs tonight. The girls have fun with them every month on a schedule. Usually they stay in 5-star hotels, but the whores at the Excelsior are so popular that rumors about them spread. They've hinted that the Arabs pay more too. I flinched slightly at the word whores, but he was right, of course. Could you do me a favor? I asked them. The thing is, I think I know this redhead a little bit. Could you get a picture or a movie of her? I'd like to see her in action. I doubt it. They have a habit of turning off their cell phones and hiding them so they can't be seen. How about I lend you my movie camera? It's small enough to hide it. Show her you're throwing away your cell phones and she'll believe you. Okay, we can try that. Now I knew where Sammy got her stash. She was a very busy girl and she'd have to pay for it. It's bad enough being married to a whore, it's even worse being married to a whore. But even worse, she must have planned the whole thing as soon as she started work, telling me she was finishing at midnight. Her coworker May was probably encouraging her. On the way home, I did the math. Say, an average of $350 to $400 a week, including quiet weeks and vacations, about $15,000 a year. But it must have taken time to reach that, so $70,000 in 4 years seems a bit excessive. But then I forget about the Arab contingent. Several times she came home late, always the same excuse, extra duties at a big conference, Arab businessmen. I wondered if the driver was also involved. I handed the camera over to my clients, and they did a great job that evening putting it on a vase of flowers. The movie started well when my wife took off her distinctive red jacket and black pleated skirt. Under the jacket was a black shirt, which was also removed with no bra. Everything was neatly folded and stacked on top of the cell phones. Under the skirt were black panties, no panties. I realized why the guests returned to her again and again. She was unlike any prostitute I had ever seen. She was smiling, laughing, kissing them both, mouth open, tongues intertwined. Other whores don't do that. Yes, it was a hardcore video. But she looked like she'd keep doing it even if they said they couldn't pay her. And it was all great quality, with sound, with a clear image of Sammy's face. James and Robert kept their faces away from the camera for the most part, but I still blurred out anything that could identify them. Unaware of the true nature of their slut, they fucked her vigorously. In front of me was a sexy woman taking sheer pleasure. On the one hand, I marveled at how much money she made. On the other hand, I wondered why she did it. She'd had nothing when we'd gotten married, and I'd given her everything she'd asked for. Not the least of which was that damn back room where she hid her extramarital gains. I copied the movie onto my laptop. Time to start making plans. She was going to pay up and end up right back where she started, with nothing. I started at a rundown pub that a friend of a friend of a friend had recommended to me. I was wearing a hooded sweatshirt like almost all the customers, and I knew the place had no security cameras. A fat young man was sipping his beer. He was pimply and sweaty. 300 pounds? He took a chance. Tell you what I'll do. I'll give you 100 now, plus 50 for gas, then another 400 a week after the job is done, provided you don't get caught. Remember, you have to steal a car, pour gasoline into it, and then pour it into canisters and abandon the car without damage. Tell me again why I have to do it that way. Because there are security cameras at every gas station in the country. But if the car is undamaged and the owner returns it within 24 hours, no one will have to check the video footage. And if they do, they won't see anyone filling the fuel canisters. Understood. And don't forget, you don't have to mess around with the gasoline upstairs. Spill one canister in each of the 4 places downstairs: the utility room, the kitchen, the study, where all the books are, and at the bottom of the stairs. Above the books. Yes, take a load off the shelves and scatter them. And don't leave the car in your possession and try to sell it. Everybody's got beacons these days. You'll still get 500. Find any cash lying around, but make it quick. And leave the jewelry, it's traceable. Anything that sets you up for a hit later, you do yourself. I found the perfect second home in Brighton, and my offer was accepted immediately. It was a detached Georgian house located 1 block from the waterfront. The previous owners had emigrated, so there was no chain. Sammy accompanied me for the weekend, and she really liked it. I ignored my usual solicitor and chose one in Brighton to handle the purchase. The following week, I took a lot of time off work. I bought about 200 old and used books from about 10 different stores. I replaced all my first editions with them. As soon as Sammy left for work on Thursday afternoon, the movers came and took all my most valuable possessions, including the first editions. One inconspicuous box from the back room contained her money. It had all been sent to a vault in Brighton. I bought some glossy paint on the pretext of painting the utility room. The last thing I did was to open a window in the back room. I thought it was a nice touch, since it was new and didn't have an alarm system yet. I often had to remind Sammy to close it properly. When it was ready, I waited until she got home from work and we went to bed. Early Friday morning, we left for Brighton. We had a second look at the house and booked a room in a nice hotel. After lunch, we drove to the solicitors to finalize the paperwork. On the way, I outlined my grand idea to her. I've been thinking about becoming co-owner of this new house, Sam. Go on. I've been racking up a lot of offers in Brighton lately, and I need to be here for a few months. So I've arranged to buy this place solely in my name. And when I get back to London on Monday, we'll sign the house in Richmond over to you. Really? It's worth more than the house in Brighton. I know, but it makes sense for you to own that house. It's got a utility room, and if anything happens to me, you'll need to stay close to your work. Thanks, sweetie. You deserve it, babe. There would indeed be more work in Brighton, but everything else was bullshit. So our new house was in my name only, with a couple of watertight clauses that had been overlooked when we signed the contract. We had amazing sex that night. The next morning, we both ate a full English breakfast. As we were finishing the last of our coffee, 2 policemen showed up, one male, the other female. Talk about a happy coincidence. Mr. and Mrs. Sykes? Yes. I'm Sergeant Matthews, and this is Constable Wilson. I'm afraid we have some bad news. Shall we sit down here, or would you prefer to go back to your room? Most of the guests had already left, and the dining room was almost empty. Here is fine. I'll order more coffee. Do you live at 27 Willow Crescent in Richmond? Yes. I'm afraid there was a fire there early this morning. Your neighbor was evacuated and informed us where you work. This morning, your secretary informed us that you were here. Sammy and I asked the question at the same moment. I said, "Was anyone hurt?" She said, "What kind of damage was done?" I don't think the officers realized anything. The man replied that no one was hurt, and his co-worker said that as far as they knew, virtually everything had been destroyed. Sammy turned pale. Did you have much of value? I have a collection of rare first editions in my office, I replied. Well, had, apparently. All insured, of course, but they're irreplaceable. They looked at Sammy. Nothing special, just clothes. I waited until we got onto the M23 highway before I met up with her. I didn't want to give her time to gather her thoughts. Open the glove compartment. There's something in there for you. All I see is a movie camera. Right. You had nothing when I married you, Sammy, and I gave you everything. The house, the new kitchen you wanted, and everything you make at the hotel stays with you. She looked worried. Now I'm going to show you how I feel about you. Press play. She pressed and watched in horror as the movie showed her repartee with James and Richard. What did she think was worse? Admitting it was a moment of madness, or admitting she'd been doing it for years? Unfortunately for you, those guys are managers at my last client's firm. They were bragging about how much fun they had sleeping with you at your hotel. I didn't realize you knew them. Well, that's obvious. Judging by the lack of underwear, you've done all this before. I understand your coworker, May, offers the same services. I even know how much you were paid for this gig, though God only knows where you put it all. Honestly, I didn't think Sammy could surprise me anymore. But she did surprise me. She was completely calm and just gave in. Though I had no doubt she still harbored faint hopes of getting her stash back. I learned all this stuff, as you call it, shortly after college. My mom was forced into prostitution to pay off her debts after my dad ran away. I had dozens of boyfriends before you. At first, I thought she was being bold to admit a lot of things. On the other hand, she could bet I wouldn't bring it up in divorce court anyway. Revelations about her past would make me look like a fool. She might even try to insinuate that I knew about everything before I married her. I decided to change the subject. I don't know how long you've been in the game. This doesn't seem like an isolated incident. Not long after I got the job, she admitted. I loved only you, and I still do. I didn't love any of them. It was just sex. It was sex for money you didn't even need. I gave you everything. But that was the reason. I wanted to accomplish something for myself. Becoming a prostitute is an accomplishment? I don't get it. You keep all the income from your hotel job. Doesn't that give you some freedom? It's not enough, she shouted. Jesus, how much do you need? Or do you mean you don't have enough sex? Thank you. I have more than enough sex. I mean, I need more money. That was a real revelation. She wasn't doing much with her paycheck as it was. Why? I can't tell you. Indeed. Would you tell me everything if it would help you in divorce court? You want a divorce? You're damn right I do. Well, there's something else you don't know about me. Maybe a divorce is what I deserve, but I don't want to tell you why I want the money. A policeman met us at the ruins of my house. Sorry you have to come back to this, sir. The fire department says someone ransacked the downstairs and then doused everything with gasoline, probably to cover their tracks. Apparently, they turned on the gas before they turned on the lights, and there were paint cans strewn around. They must have fled quickly. The whole thing went off like a bomb. Jesus, do you have any idea how they got here? They probably snuck up that little path that runs along the backyard, climbed over the fence, and climbed through your utility room window. After that, it was relatively easy to sneak into the kitchen, and no one would have heard. I looked at Sammy accusingly. Right. The fire was reported by the Marstons, who lived next door, around 4 in the morning. They heard a noise that woke them up. It could have been gas, but your closed, tight curtains behind the double-paned windows would have muffled the sound. By the time the windows blew out, it was too far away. Sammy made her way to what had once been a utility room. Everything was gone, almost everything. She could hardly ask if there was any trace of the thousands of pounds left there, but the disappointment on her face spoke for itself. Once upon a time, I'd reinsured the house and all its contents, both new and old. The insurance company had pictures of my first editions, but they never bothered to look for them. I wouldn't report them stolen either, and the burned second-hand books were unrecognizable. Sammy and I went to a nearby coffee shop to give the firemen and police time to finish their investigation. I think you set the whole thing up, she accused. Really? I find out you were doing hookers at the Excelsior and decide to burn down my house as punishment? How does that work? You said it yourself. Burn my house down. It's yours and you get all the insurance. And you made sure to put the house in Brighton in your name, too. It seems very convenient that that house burned down just after you said it would be mine. Interesting theory, but I lost all my precious books. They can't be replaced. From day one, you've lied about what time you finish work, giving an extra hour for your adventures. You contribute nothing financially to our marriage and let me pay for a new kitchen and utility room. Which of these 2 apartments do you think you deserve? And more importantly, which one do you think the divorce judge will give you? Okay, you're going to win in divorce court. Anyway, why would I burn the place down? I could just use this movie evidence to prove you're guilty. Are you going to? Which would you prefer? Surely it would be better if the case never went to trial. We should just resign for 2 years and do it quietly. Should we? Think about it. In court, I'll show this movie. Your name will get in the papers, the hotel will deny involvement, and you'll lose your job. So will May, I suppose. You'll have to start all over again. But if we do this quietly, my evidence will never see the light of day. You'll keep your job, or rather, both jobs. You're a good-looking woman. Soon you'll be rich enough to buy your own place. You may be right. So what do I get? Leave the money in your bank, plus whatever you've earned, and I'll give you a third of the insurance payment on the house, but not on the contents. Sounds fair enough. But in return, you have to tell me why you did it. I suppose I can do that too. I lied about my mom being dead. She's alive and living in a lodging house near King's Cross Station. I wanted to find a better place for her. She's too old to still be in the game. Why didn't you tell me? I could have helped her. You still don't get it, do you? I wanted to do it myself. She never made me go with all those men. I did it to help her, and I still want to help. I love her. As soon as the insurance company paid the money, I took a week off and tackled the Brighton house. I recreated my library of first editions, but saw no need for a back room. With the money from the insurance on the house and its contents, I went through Brighton bookstores to add to my collection. The remaining money was enough for a small villa in Spain. Sammy and I agreed not to socialize, and she checked into a hotel. After 2 years, we went to court and got a divorce. But 3 months after that, I wondered if I had been too generous with her. She could afford a lot with her bank account, her new earnings and the compensation payment I shared, and what made me think about it was returning from a business trip to my house in Brighton. It had been burned to the ground.